This is the comedy equation, beginning with the primitive. Clown equals pie in the face, rubber chicken whoopee cushion, times the square root of sex plus all bodily functions, over mother-in-law squared plus take my wife please, times king's constant, trying to get a doctor in the middle of the night, over the very popular rabbi, priest, and a minister walking into a bar naked. But seriously, folks, I hope you find this very enlightening. And away we go. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. For those of you under 50 years of age, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Alan King, www.com. That's about as modern as I get. And I've been around so long, and all I've been hearing for the last 2 days on campus was how good I look. That's the first thing you get when you get old. Everybody kept saying, you look good. Compared to what? Coming in at the Los Angeles airport, I'm buying a newspaper, and there are two very attractive young women. And I see them talking, and I figure they must be talking about me. And I go to pay for the paper, and she says, excuse me, sir, didn't you used to be somebody famous? And I said, yes. She says, could you tell us your name? I said, Ernest Hemingway. I'm coming out of the Miami airport just a week ago. Gentleman's walking down with 2 aluminum walkers, his wife, obviously, and a male nurse. And all of a sudden, as I'm about to exit the airport, he starts screaming, Alan King, where? It was like a terrorist attack. People were laying on the floor. My wife says, you better get over there fast. I walked up to this gentleman. His hands were shaking, he had tears in his eyes. I said, Alan King, he said, my mother used to let me stay up on Sunday night to watch you. You know, if this show is called the College of Comedy, behind me are the masters of the universe. We all learned from them. I just go through them. Some of you may not recognize. Of course, it's Laurel and Hardy, and it's Jack Benny, George Burns, and Buster Keaton. The great one, Jackie Gleason, and Abbott and Costello, Harold Lloyd, Charlie Chaplin, of course, Mae West, Will Rogers, Lucille Ball, W.C. Fields, Groucho Marx, and someone who was never given the recognition, but with such great respect among us, that's Moms Mabley. She was a great, great comedian. And I want to introduce my guests. This first gentleman created the perfect forum for his quick-witted comedic talents. He also revised the ancient art of political humor. Ladies and gentlemen, the star of ABC's Politically Incorrect, Bill Maher.
A dirty trick. Thank you very much. Hey, Alan. How are you?
If you will find one of those uncomfortable chairs,
Okay.
we'll continue.
I'll be right here, Alan, if you
Thank
need
you,
me.
Bill. This young lady's career took off in the 80s after many appearances on The Tonight Show, David Letterman. She's the winner of the American Comedy Award for Funniest Stand-Up, a best-selling author and screenwriter, and who says you can't be pretty and funny at the same time. Welcome, Ms. Rita Rudner.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I want to ask if I wore the right thing. Do you like this?
Oh, yeah.
Because I like it because you can spill anything on it and it only adds to its beauty. Right here, I have a little chicken parmesan. Which chair would be mine?
I would say this chair.
Why are they so high? Are we expecting a flood?
To list all of the credits that this gentleman has received would take an entire semester. I'm just going to rattle off a few. Tony Award for City of Angels, Tony Award for A Funny Thing Happened to Me on the Way to the Forum, Oscar nomination for Tootsie and Oh God, Emmy Award for Barbarians at the Gate. From his early days as a writer for Sid Caesar to creating one of the most popular television shows of all times, MASH, author, playwright, screenwriter, raconteur, Larry Gelbart. Thank you. Thank you. Want a break? Good? You want to make it tough on a guy? You introduce him as one of the funniest men in America. Let him follow that. From his early days in Chicago to headlining the great entertainment palaces of the world, we in the trade call him a comedian's comedian. You want to know who makes me laugh? My good friend, Shecky Greene. Tonight, the discussion is quite simple. What's funny? Sigmund Freud wrote many published papers on what makes people laugh. I read a lot of them. There's not a laugh in a carload. Now, Shecky, you knew Sigmund. What makes people laugh?
Well, Sigmund told me, I'll never forget it. He said to me, lay down on the couch. I said, I don't know you yet. He says, why do you hate your mother, And I says, my mother couldn't cook. I once said to my mother, why do you make the chicken so greasy? And she said, I never make chicken. I made a pot of grease. I shape it like chicken.
Well, now we know what makes people laugh.
What's funny is that I've been doing comedy now a little over 50 years. I still don't know what makes people laugh.
Larry.
Sir.
Do you have any theory about what makes people laugh?
I think people laugh at others without realizing they're laughing at themselves. I think we laugh because we're surprised, either pleasantly or unpleasantly. Anything that catches us off guard, I think, tends to make us laugh, either because it really is funny or because it's a shock. We laugh defensively. We laugh offensively. I hate jokes, just jokes. But someone told me today a definition of a Freudian slip. It's when you say one thing, but you mean a mother.
Here's my analysis. There are two totally pure pleasures in life. That is laughter and orgasm. I don't know why I'm looking at you. Said orgasm.
Obviously to get a laugh.
I was just turning. It just happened to land on you.
It's
I meant to be hitting on that bald man in the first row. Excuse me, sir. We do have a date. This was no.
Let's see if we both can't laugh at the same time.
All right. But I think that's truly true.
What about both at the same time? Laughing when you have an orgasm.
That was my honeymoon.
It takes a long.
But really,
it takes a long time to learn to be able to laugh during sex. But that's a different subject.
Yes.
But it does. I mean, at first you're too macho. But I think because those are the two pure pleasures. In other words, you don't fake either one of them. A laugh, honesty gets laughs because people don't even want to laugh. You say something honest and it's involuntary. Same thing with an orgasm. I mean, these are pure pleasures. Even love is tainted with other things that may or not be real. These are real. And I think for the same reason, they're the two things that you can't analyze.
Charlie Chaplin said audiences laugh. He felt his audiences laughed for two reasons. One, because they saw it coming. They saw the banana peel and knew he was going to flop.
Right.
Or they didn't see it coming. He'd walk past the banana peel safely and then get hit with a ladder.
or fall into the manhole cover.
Right.
It always has to be a shock in some way.
I think so. Or a pleasant expectation realized.
And different people have different levels of shock. Somebody made the point that to make the average guy laugh, you just have to show, some comic dressed as an old lady falling down a manhole cover. But to make a comic laugh, it's got to really be an old lady.
So They say you can fake applause, but you can't really fake laughter.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And you can't fake a, oh, never mind.
You know, timing is very important.
Or rhythm.
Rhythm and timing. Now we're back to an orgasm with the rhythm. Go ahead.
No, but you know, the legendary Youngman who just did total non sequiturs, you know. Take my wife for all these jokes, you know. I took my mother-in-law to the racetrack. She bent down. They put a saddle on her. She came in third, you know. Do you all remember the first time you laughed intellectually at something or someone when you were a youngster? Who made you laugh first? Or?
Everybody. I'm going to tell you, when I would go and live at the places where they had vaudeville. And I just lived for it. And I didn't think I'd ever do it or anything. But I just appreciated the fact that the comic, when the singer was on, and it could have been a headliner like Sinatra, I didn't listen. I waited for that comic. And I didn't even know I had it in me, you know?
Rita?
Well, the first thing I remember laughing hysterically at when I was a kid was a poem. Someone told me a poem, and it was, roses are red, violets are blue. I like peanut butter. Can you skate? I laughed at it for like weeks and weeks, and I kept laughing. And that defines how I do comedy. Yes.
Bill?
What was the question?
Your early recollections of laughter.
It's all school, you know. I mean, going to school and wanting to be funny at school because was what I had. You know?
But you knew you were funny at a very early age?
Yeah.
The ability to make people laugh?
I remember being like 8 or 9 and thinking, I'm going to be a comedian.
Really?
And I never told anybody because I didn't, you know.
Parents, you came up, again, house of humor?
Yeah, they were funny. But school was the place. It was just a place.
Well, that was another thing. You know, if you couldn't be the football hero.
That's what I'm saying.
If you couldn't be the football hero and you were funny, even if you were unattractive, don't take this personally. But
I didn't come here to be insulted.
You got, you came to the wrong place.
Go. Exactly.
But it was great, and you'd get invited to parties and things.
Yeah, it was a way, and to this day, when they do surveys about what women like in men, they always list a sense of humor first.
The two things, laughs and orgasms.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's it. I think if you get somebody to laugh, they almost are in your power, and it's about power. It's about power and sex, Larry. I'm sorry,
right?
but
First sex or first laugh? What are we doing here?
No. Well, did it come at the same time? I don't know. No, but Larry.
No, but my dad was a barber.
And he was my barber, and your father was funny. But
my father was funny, but my mother was witty. My mother really had a devastating sense of humor. You know, a needle. My dad just knew every joke and was very fast. And I remember, not when I heard my first laugh, but I remember getting my first laugh at about the age of 5 because they told me these jokes with dirty punchlines, and it was kind of cute seeing a little kid saying 4-letter words, you know?
But Larry, did you ever perform professionally? Did you ever do stand-up?
I did stand-up one night.
One night?
One night.
When you write a joke, it's so very private. Who do you share it with, you know? I mean, when we tell a joke, somebody's out there listening. But when
that's the only...
Alone, you write it.
Yeah, but you're in at the moment of discovery. When you have a funny thought and you see it realized either on a processor monitor or on a yellow pad, you're the audience and you're enjoying it.
And you know it's funny. I mean, your professionalism, instinct, and experience says it's funny.
All of that says try it. It's got a very good chance.
You write what you wish somebody had said to you. That's why.
Right.
Otherwise, you'd write what somebody else writes. It's not your taste. You're exactly your taste.
Well, I really never know.
I think I'm funny when I write something. It's like, oh, of course. That's what I like. And some people go, no.
But I always wait.
You're very wrong.
I don't know what I was going to say now.
This is not chauvinistic in any way, but guys can be funny around the street corner or in school, but a young lady.
I was never funny. I didn't talk till I was 25. I was a dancer. You don't become a dancer because you're witty. You don't become a comedian because you're light on your feet. I don't know how this happened.
You don't really? You can't in retrospect?
I didn't say anything. I really just took ballet lessons and just shut up. But then my feet hurt. And then I started to talk. But the way I first knew things, it's all true. The way I first knew things were funny was an audience would laugh. And my first comedy routine that I wrote, even though I was writing what you said, Bill, and what I thought was funny, it wasn't. And the audience laughed between the jokes at me trying to be funny. So I knew there was something inherently funny in me. I just didn't know how to write a joke or how to blend it.
Were you presenting yourself as, forgive the...
None of your business. No, I'm just kidding. I was hanging around comedy clubs, and I couldn't get on because I wasn't writing jokes yet. And I was on a showcase night, and Bill was the MC at Catch a Rising Star.
Yeah, I was in the business 3 minutes, and she was in the business 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I got to...
You were good.
Yeah, and let me tell you,
And
right from the beginning,
You knew?
Rita Rudner was the perfect kid in class. She used to come in, sit at the end of the bar, she never drank, she had her notebook, she'd write in her notebook, she'd like do her homework all night long at the end of the bar while the other comics were on stage. And those of us who weren't on, we were getting high, we were smoking pot, we were drinking, hitting on chicks, telling jokes, whatever. That's a Rising Star. And Rita would be at the end of the bar with her notebook, doing her homework, putting the reinforcements in her loose leaf, you know. And then she would go on stage, and she always had killer stuff. I mean, the work paid off. She did great jokes. She still does. She doesn't do it unless she knows if it's a great joke. And writes in the very beginning.
I used to do the opposite. I wouldn't write. I used to work places where I would have to, impromptu, I would just get up and take a subject.
Oh, I remember that.
Well, if I got drunk, let's say, the night before.
I don't remember
I got to start drinking.
No, I got drunk in Vegas many, many times.
Yes.
And then finally they started to arrest me. There was a time in Vegas they used to protect us, right? They would take us home. It wasn't our home, but they would take us home. And from this, I derived some comedy, because I'd say, they took me to jail last night, and they threw me in a cell with a murderer. It's the first time I realized the judicial system of this country stinks, because a half hour later, the murderer's free on bail, and I was still in jail. So I said, "What's the matter with you?" I says, "Let me out." The guy says, "You're a drunk." I says, "You just let the murderer out." He says, "You're a drunk." I said, "Let me out, I'll murder someone." And everything that happened in my life, I took it. Everything that happened, like with my father, and these are the things that I created comedy with. But I could never sit down like these people and say, this line is going to be funny, this line. I would have to actually go out and test it. Like talking about my gambling. I would go and I'd talk about the thing. Something that bothered me very badly was my father used to take me to racetracks all the time. So I created something. I said that I used to watch people on television, the father image. Like a Charlie Grapewood would take Dean Stockwell out. "Son, this is America. That's the greatest land in the world. Smell that land, And I always envisioned my father would do that with me, but he didn't do that. He took me to racetracks, and he used to take me into the paddock, and he'd reach down and say, "Son, this is hard. This is the reason why you're not going to college." Well, I never shook hands with my father again, but I kissed him a lot. But these are the things where comes my sense of humor, And that was my whole act. Now I close with this song and I get the hell out of here. But everything that happened to me, talking about my mother, talking about my wives, I was married 3 times. My first wife was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, which is true. Second one was Hawaiian, and I didn't love either one of them. I was in love with drums, Now that comes from my life.
Can I just say,
Larry,
you're essentially writing as you're performing.
Oh, yes.
I mean, writing is recorded thinking.
But I'm not sitting down and writing.
Well, however you do it, you're creating comedy.
Well,
It's the same thing.
We come out of the same school. We worked so constantly. We did 3 shows a night, so if we ad-libbed the line and it got a bit of a laugh, second show you added another line, and after another line, then all of a sudden it became a routine.
That's absolutely right.
Well, that's what Bill and I did, the exact same thing. We'd go from the improv to the Catch Rising Star to the comedy store.
We just did it in the city.
Yeah.
We went from one comedy club to another. On a weekend night, you could do 6 sets.
Absolutely. You make up to $60.
3 clubs. Exactly. No. And all the pride you could swallow. It was a good deal.
Well, Larry, when you write now, you sit down and you're going to write a screenplay, a funny screenplay or a funny play or funny. What happens between your writing Now you've written it. Now the director gets it and actors.
In the movies, you just go to see it and you get your heart broken, once, because it's nothing like what you imagine. In the theater, you have a chance, and in television, oddly enough, television series, you have a chance to realize the work, to combine elements of your own work, elements of the actor's personality. But the big trick for a comedy writer in writing for multiple casts is not to have everybody sound like the comedy writer. Not to have everybody have your point of view, your rhythm, to really write characters. And
however, what like when we were talking, when you do your jokes from truth and I do my jokes from truth too, like my husband's English and I'm American, so if we had children they'd be rude but disgusted by their own behavior, things like that. And you start with your truth. I married someone English. So because I'm learning, it's always a constant learning experience, but writing screenplays too, and my husband and I have had some movies made. We always say, who is a person that we know that we can base this on? And from a person we know, we get a rhythm and start writing that. So you start from the truth.
They can't all be Rita.
No, so you have to go outside, but it's from the truth, but from someone else's truth.
When you say truth, we hear the word truth in comedy. Truth with a little distortion, just...
An exaggeration.
Exaggeration. But do you take your own personal behavior, your own idiosyncrasies, your own problems, and do you do it? Do you share it with the audience?
Absolutely. Whatever's wrong with me, I want everybody to know. Because I'm neurotic about my weight, and I have to write about it.
You're neurotic about your weight?
Oh, yes. I weigh myself every morning very carefully. What I do is I slowly lower myself down onto the scale while hanging from the shower curtain rod. And when I reach the weight I want to be, I black out. So...
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Yeah. But that's what you have to do. You have to go, what's wrong with me, and how can I tell it to other people?
All work is essentially autobiographical.
Well, Larry, how do you differentiate between writing a comedy, like you did so successfully, and then all of a sudden have to do something barbarian at the gate? How does the mind work, and how could you set your mind to write something that serious and do the other?
Well, the point was to find the humor in Barbarians, not to do a serious piece about it, to substitute money for sex. That was a bedroom farce, except it was about dollars instead of getting laid. Well, but it was based on truth. I didn't invent those mindsets. I just had to be faithful to them.
The cliche of the fine line between tragedy and comedy has been discussed a zillion times. If it's sad, it's sad. If it's funny, it's funny.
Mel Brooks said, if I cut my little finger, if I get a paper cut, that's a tragedy. If you fall in a sewer and get killed, that's comedy.
Well,
you know what's fun? Nobody ever remembers what I said.
What did you say? Tell me
Whatever
what you
I
said.
said, nobody says Shecky says,
Shecky said. My next question. Tell me about this politically correct, which is inhibiting so much of the humor in our country, as against what you've come in.
Not in my temple, it won't.
No, I know that. That's why.
No, right. I mean,
are there no taboos for you? And for
there are taboos, but the taboos are something's not funny. I mean, if it's just not funny,
or too fresh, or too new.
Yeah.
I mean, if the wound is still bleeding on some situation.
No, I refuse to. You can speak about things seriously, even if you wouldn't joke about it that day.
Would you do an assassination joke?
That's right. There's a difference between making a joke in the monologue about something versus having a discussion
in which a joke might occur.
Exactly, and that's the difference. No, I remember we talked about Christopher Reeve with his accident the day it happened. Just
in the discussion.
Well, it was a discussion about horseback riding. We talked about River Phoenix when he died.
Great stuff.
But can you really, now we're talking about humor now, can you really make fun of someone you really hate?
Yeah,
Bill
sure.
can.
Who else would?
No, I don't mean you dislike. I'm talking about were there great jokes about Hitler?
His name is George W. Bush. I do it every night. I mean,
What does the W stand for? Seriously, Bill, what does the W stand for?
W stands for wuss.
W stands for what?
Wuss.
I really dislike this Bush guy, so yes, I will talk about him in a disparaging way. Would you like me to?
No.
But Alan, why do you ask?
Well, I was trying to get to one of the great tragedies of mankind, the Holocaust. No one ever made light of it. You just wouldn't dare. And then, of course,
The Jews did, though.
well, amongst themselves.
Amongst themselves. Well, the Nazis were notorious pole faces. Yeah.
And Schindler's List has like 3 laughs in it. I mean, tops. You know, I'm like, what? This is funny? No, I don't think so.
What was that great joke? Didn't Henny say this to Milton? I'm going to call Schindler and have you taken off the list.
See, that's a Holocaust joke.
That's a Holocaust joke.
Really, your humor is in no way, or at least controversial. Yours is...
Not yet. I have no. What I do is I do things coming from my life. Because I think when you become a comedian, you kind of have to make a lot of decisions about what type of comedian you're going to be. And if you're a comedian coming from a place, an inner place, then you expose yourself. If you're a comedian commenting on the outside world, that's a different persona. And Bill has a great persona for commenting on the outside world. Me, not so much.
Yours is very personal.
Mine is a very personal
Hers
viewpoint.
is personal, and Bill's just monologues. I have to get into a character. I have to feel a character when I perform. Like I do something in French, and I have to feel this person, you know? Like Sid Caesar, the same thing. I mean, Sid off stage a lot of times, you know, Sid, how are you? You know. But if you say to him, how is your uncle? You know. So.
But you were never a jokester. You were a character comedian.
I could never be line, you know. I couldn't remember line.
When we talk about the personal feelings and coming out in our work, now, Shecky brought it up. Shecky has had some emotional problems, really. And I mean, you know, you're drinking. You haven't had a drink in many years.
Many years.
You gambled. You haven't gambled in many years.
Not since this afternoon.
But when you were working with all those problems, were you telling the audience about all your failings?
Everything that happened to me that day, or anything that happened to me, an automobile accident, I'd get up and talk about it, you know. And the funny thing about it, when I walk off stage after doing all these things, I would get depressed.
Look what you just listened to.
Larry, could you write that for me, please?
Someone said that indifference is the foe, the deadly foe of comedy. Indifference. What happens when you're out there and all of a sudden they're not laughing at you? You weren't always Bill Maher of Politically Correct. You walk out now, hey, what happened when you were growing and there was no laughs? Was there something? Did you have a gimmick or something?
What did I do when I sucked, Alan? Is that what you're asking? I sucked it up like every comic does. That's all you can.
What about hecklers? Did hecklers get to you?
It wasn't them heckling me that was the problem. It was me blaming them for what my.
But were you funny with the anger?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
riding
it's
a
a very
tiger.
touchy
There were nights when I could do that, when I could ride that tiger.
You get giddy.
And win them back.
Yeah, but
and
anger
like
is good for comedy.
What
Not
happened?
for me.
Aggression is good for comedy. Anger is good for comedy.
Not this kind.
No.
Not failing publicly.
Yeah,
Not Bill's
sometimes you
kind.
just would like make them hate you. And then even if you did say something funny, they won't laugh at you.
When that happened and Bill would be yelling at the audience and no one in the audience would be laughing, 3 comics in the back would be hysterical.
Band laughs, yeah.
When you go out there, are you to an audience? Tony Newley wrote it in a song, Funny Man. He called the audience a monster with 1,000 eyes.
Look at me, I'm a funny man.
That's right.
I'm a man who makes you laugh. Look at me, yes. Beautiful. I didn't know I could do that. No. And I'll never do it again, I'll tell you.
No. When you go out to face an audience, what is it the thought process? Are you out there to please them, to make them love you, or is it like lion taming? You know, do you go out there, you know, good evening opponents? And every comic, for all the years I watched them, their opening line was, how you doing, and where you from?
I wrote that. I got so upset.
Someone said to me,
I wrote that.
you wrote that line? How you
They
doing?
all ripped me
Where are you
off.
from? I wish somebody in the audience says, none of your business.
Can I just mention that you can only say on PBS?
Yes.
They told me I couldn't say it at all.
Don't say it'll offend Mr. King. Then he says it.
Let's talk about profanity.
That word, I'm going to tell you, it's very interesting. I right after Gandhi won all kinds of awards, and I walked out and I talked about Gandhi, and I says Gandhi was dying. He wanted independence from Britain, and he was lying there, and there was death in his eyes. And a Hindu came to him and he says, "Oh, great and glorious Gandhi, I want to ask you something." And Gandhi, out in his strength, says, "Yes, my friend, what can I do for you?" He said, "Gandhi, I have killed a Muslim child because they've killed my child. In anger, I have killed his child. Tell me, oh great Gandhi, what to do?" And Gandhi looked up and said, "My friend, you have to adopt a Muslim child and raise him as your own, and only then can you be forgiven." And the man says, "Thank you, Gandhi." And Gandhi says, "Come a little closer." And Gandhi says, "Come a little closer." And the man says, "Yes, Gandhi, come a little closer." He says, "Yes, Gandhi." And Gandhi says, "Get me a sandwich."
And it
Should have
feels
tried
good.
corned beef, something.
Oh, we're going to have a lot of fun in the editing room tomorrow. And I started it. I want to discuss the idea, we've always heard that comedians are wonderful, can be wonderful actors, and yet wonderful actors don't usually have any idea of what's funny. Like Dustin in Lenny. I thought all the drama was great, but when he got up there to do the monologue, do the stand-up, it just didn't have the rhythm.
But that's not actors' kind of comedy.
No.
But why a
They don't-
comedian?
no,
Then
you-
why do you
Because they're
say-
not comedians. Comedians
No,
do,
but why are
Dustin's-
comedians good actors? A
Dustin
lot
is
of them.
funny in a dramatic role where he has to be funny, but he can't
Right.
be a stand-up
Right,
comic.
we can do both. They can't.
That's right.
Good for us.
But that's true. I mean, not all comedians are great actors, but a comedian can be a really good actor. But actors, with one exception, Tom Hanks, when he did Punchline, I thought he sounded like a real comic.
Yeah, well,
And he worked.
didn't he ever do?
He came into. I remember we were at the Improv in L.A.
Oh, but he never started as a stand.
No, he didn't. But he came into the Improv, and he is somebody so good, so funny, so talented. He really became a comedian. And
Traditionally, show people worse than anybody. Their own business. They'll research for 100 years
Yeah.
to play a schizophrenic Siamese twin.
Right.
But to play a performer or a
Right.
director or a writer, it's
Right.
like we're aliens to
Yeah.
ourselves.
All right, you said Siamese twins. I got to hold it because we talked about this backstage, and this may be the only opportunity I'll ever have because I don't get on television very much anymore. Every once in a while I'm seen on the news leaving a celebrity's funeral. Georgia Jessel, who very few people left alive remember, who was and Jessel, all the great comedians that are behind this were sitting around telling me stories about how many women they'd had in their days in vaudeville, And Jessel looked at him, he said, "I had an affair with one of the Siamese twins." And Jessel said, "Wait a minute," he said, 2 years later, I was walking on Michigan Boulevard, and here comes the Siamese twins. They stopped in front of me and said, "Mr. Jessel, you may not remember us." What's funny about bodily functions? Can anybody
Because
explain
we're all slightly embarrassed or inhibited
it's cheating
or
to
trained to
If
think
it's
of...
cheating, do you think it's cheating?
Yeah, because it's an involuntary embarrassment that comes out, and it's not really funny. It's just
not
oh,
funny.
help
What does the
me.
word
Yeah.
caca suggest to you, Shecky?
Yeah, caca. Let's get to one of the world's great authorities on caca. Shecky Greene.
This is very interesting because I was doing a thing on different celebrities doing impressions, and instead of doing the impression the way everybody else did the impression, I did the celebrities going to the washroom, like Clark Gable going to the toilet. It was "Scarlett, I want to tell you something, sweetheart, but I can't tell you right now. Go and potty," And I would get my laughs with everything, but one night I had met Charles Cerner from Apollo 17, and I said, Charlie, how did you guys go to the toilet? And he said, we went. I said, but how? He said, well, we went. And I said, well, you got to tell me how you went, you know. He says, we made a caca on the moon. I said, you made a caca on the moon? You brilliant scientific mind, you couldn't put it in scientific terms, you made caca on the moon. And then I sang, oh, there's caca on the moon tonight. That is why the moon is not too bright. There is caca on the moon, there is caca on the moon, there's caca on the moon tonight, everybody. Caca moon, sing it! Then I said, could you imagine a Russian cosmonaut gets up there and he's walking around the moon and he goes, Droshki mayecha drod, you get pastechaka yechoprot. Niet kabayecha drodski payet. Hello, Moscow, this is Boris on the moon. Gimayecha drod, gibayecha is the caca on the moon. Niet, nada, the caca.
You ask me about comics as actors, he's a great actor.
He's a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I
think the reason that comedians have the ability to be actors is most of us are acting when we're doing our monologues. We're doing characters.
Yes.
Well, you're students of behavior.
But when we look at comedy, in retrospect, words fade. You talk about a joke about whatever's topical for the moment. Next week, it fades.
But Bill has a perfect form because he has a nightly show.
Yes, I know that, but what I'm talking about for time, I'm talking about the giants behind us. I mean...
Wow, they are giants.
They were...
I didn't see that.
Actual size.
Yeah.
Look, I got my picture up there with the hat.
Buster Keaton and Abbott and Costello, they were all, in a sense, physical comedians.
Was Mae West that funny?
Yeah, Mae West was funny.
was funny.
I watched Buster Keaton.
Oh, yeah.
I watched Buster Keaton this afternoon with my 3-year-old grandson, and he was laughing his head off.
That's right.
I mean, that is
I just
eternal.
think that everybody is so... The styles are not enough to sustain.
Well,
it's the word rather than the personality is what I'm trying to get at.
Or the shtick.
Or the shtick. That's
Wait,
what...
I mean, this was a silent movie, seriously, that we were watching, and his style is so timeless, so universal.
When I started studying comedy, I went back and I got all those movies, the Buster Keaton movies and Charlie Chaplin. Oh, yeah, I studied them all.
And well, tell me, what did... Was there a learning? Did you... What did you learn? What did you learn as a talking person from, say, Buster Keaton or Harold
Well, Buster
Lloyd?
Keaton did perfect jokes, even though he didn't speak. And I was trying to learn how to write a joke. And whenever there was a film festival, I would go and study all that Carole Lombard movies, old Bob Hope movies, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Jacques Tati. Jacques Tati is the perfect comedy movie with no speaking whatsoever.
Well,
perfect jokes.
Can you study comedy?
Yes.
There are books after books after books telling you how to write a successful film.
No, but you have to make your own connections, but at least you can have a base.
And courses.
You can't take a recipe and
you can't.
bake something if you haven't got the pilot light.
Yeah, but you're doing yourself.
But how do you know if you've got the pilot light unless you start from somewhere?
Well, if you're out of work long enough, I think you should get the idea.
But Rita, actually, you are doing yourself. So watching all these other people, did it take you a long time to realize that you're doing it yourself? I mean, you're creating that character.
No, I knew that, but I also wanted to see what other people had done and what made people laugh. And people who stick around are people you want to look at because they're generation after generation, and you have to go back and see what made them stick.
You know, I must say, looking at these icons here, and I admire all of them, I've looked at all of their stuff, and I appreciate the art, but to me, it's like if I want to laugh, no, I'm not going to watch Will Rogers. It just doesn't translate.
Well, you
that
just
much.
happened to pick out the one guy that wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Will Rogers was not.
No, I don't think Will Rogers.
No, he was.
Will
Well, he's
Rogers
on the
was-
wall.
Does he
He's
have
on
a-
the big wall. He's
He
a
has
giant on the wall.
publicist, yeah.
Well, I noticed.
God,
no, but Will Rogers was a very charming.
He was the
gentle-
Andy Rooney of his day.
That's right. That's exactly what it was. He was
That's pretty low, Larry.
When I started watching Jack Benny, that was someone I could identify with because he was so complete as a character. and he didn't look funny at all. And it was absolutely what he did with words and his persona and his timing.
But
I'm sorry.
No,
Larry, you know Jack.
that was a real case of comedy architecture.
That's right.
From
Absolutely.
vaudeville, not radio.
And Bob Hope too.
Well,
from
yeah,
Baltimore.
no, but Hope was a prototype. The gum chewing hat,
with the
brim
MC,
up. Yeah, the guy who didn't make it with the girl, but he was fun. But Benny really built a public Benny as opposed to the private Benny. He built this cheapskate, this vain, silly, petty man, so that in time they didn't have to write jokes. They just wrote character lines. And of course, the most famous moment, or a long moment, in radio came when Benny, in the script, was approached by a man, a character, a stick-up man who said, "Your money or your life?" Benny said nothing because the audience knew that he really valued money.
It was 30 seconds.
Yes. And then another 30 after he did the line.
And then the laugh, after the third laugh, he said, I'm thinking.
Now, as I'm thinking a funny line.
No, from
but
Benny.
In that character.
Well, you know, Larry, I genuinely loved Jack Benny. At the end of Benny's life, he went to play Caesar's Palace. And every celebrity was there, and I was sitting in the back, and Benny came out, and a standing ovation. And Benny always said, you know, when you get a standing ovation when you come out, you're in a lot of trouble. You know, it's a standing ovation when you get off. And Benny, and every time he did one of his moves, you know, they laughed, and I was standing in the back, and all of a sudden, having been such a devotee of, you know, knew every move that the man could make, I started feeling comfortable. Show was over, everybody in the green room. I didn't open my mouth. He said, "What went wrong?" I'll never forget this. And I looked at him. I said, "Jack, you did an impression of Jack Benny that show."
Very astute.
I said, when you said, well, it was 2 beats too long. He was doing, Rich Little doing Jack Benny. I told it to him. He says, what are you doing for the second show? You better be out there. And I stood at the back, and he came out there, bang! I mean, in Benny's style, but everything was perfect.
You're absolutely right, because it's really important to not recreate, but to re-experience. Because it's the same thing when you're doing a play, and an actor, instead of experiencing the line, tries to recreate a line. It will never work.
We see different audiences, so we have something to compare it to. The audience never has anything to compare it to. They don't know when they suck.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they're laughing. No, you're a great crowd, but I'm telling you, there are audiences, and of course I'd have to say that even if you weren't, but you actually are. But I mean, they don't know what the crowd you had last show sounded like. So sometimes they're enjoying the hell out of you, but they just don't make a lot of noise. Like Japanese people, God bless them, they don't make a lot of noise when they laugh. Also, they don't understand English. That's another bad thing. That's when you're working for the Japanese. But
well, you know, there's the famous story. We all know there's a famous story about a woman calls a comedian on the phone in his dressing room and says to him, I'm just so taken by you. I just like to have, I watched your show and I'd like to have sex with you. And he says, which show did you see? The first or the second show? You know?
You want to be liked by the audience. It's not so much to accepting the joke or anything else. If the audience likes you, they'll accept a lot of things. It's if you love somebody, a girl, you love something, and the girl has hair that's on it, you don't tell her their hair looks bad. I mean, you love that human being. Frank Fay, who was one of the greatest people in vaudeville, who later on went on to do
most miserable son of a that ever walked the face of the earth.
I brought that up because we haven't had a dirty word for a while. You're right. But the audience wouldn't accept Frank Fay like they did Benny. And Benny was doing, actually,
he was doing
Frank Fay.
Can I tell one Frank Fay story?
Please.
Frank Fay was
hot. Let's tell the audience.
Oh yeah, he had the best reputation as a performer and the worst reputation as a human being. He was sued once, and his lawyer said, when you get on the stand, don't alienate the judge or the jury because you have a way of doing that with people. He said, okay. He said, just answer the question, yes, no, whatever. Make it brief. The prosecuting attorney said, what is your name, please? He said, Frank Fay. He said, what is your occupation? He said, world's greatest entertainer. Afterwards, his lawyer said, "Why did you have to say you were the world's greatest entertainer?" He said, "I was under oath."
I think at this time, we'd like to talk to you, and if you have any questions, we have some microphones in the aisles, and if you have a question, it's not like a town hall meeting. I don't want to know your name. We don't care.
Right on, Alan.
Right. I would like your question, and if it's just for the panel or if it's for an individual, say so, will you? Anyone would like to ask? Yes, sir.
I was wondering if we could have Bill Maher make fun of George W. Bush.
Young man, I think that George W. Bush is quite bright unless you ask him a question. Is that your joke?
No,
Okay,
but it's
what's
a
your
perfectly
joke?
good one.
Give us a
I'm too
Bush.
mad to have jokes about him, but no, I have many jokes about him, and most of them
Did you do
concern-
jokes about his father?
Oh, I even went after his mother, which did not go well down at the Houston affiliate. But I don't understand why this Bush family is so off limits.
Yeah.
You know, they're like Reagan's brain. You know, you just can't talk about it.
All right, we have another question.
Well,
Yes, young lady.
A joke or a performance by a comedian will sometimes elicit a lot of laughter from some people, but other people may not think it's funny at all. Now, isn't
Tell us
part
about
of
it.
the humor isn't part of the humor the way the audience will interpret it themselves, rather than your timing or your rhythm or anything else?
I didn't have any answer. She asked you, Bill.
But you were asking about people in the audience, right? And the fact that they have different sensibilities, and no matter how good you are, what you are, and that's absolutely true. Which is why it's good when you get to the point in your career where they know who you are. Because then the people who don't like you don't come.
That's good.
I know, and you know, when I told jokes on Hell's Angels night, it didn't go over really well.
Right.
But now the Hell's Angels, they don't come to see me. It's okay.
No, you know something, there's some imponderables as to why people are laughing, why they're not laughing. In any theater community, people from very different shows will say, "What a lousy audience tonight." It's like that Tuesday, you know, every house was filled with people who did not want to laugh. Other nights, the same material,
Yeah.
virtually the same performance, because a performer wants to win you, and thereby win him or herself. So that same performance will get roars of laughter.
You'd think that any cross-section, audiences would all be the same, because there'd be the certain amount. But it's not true. It's one of the great mysteries of show business, why an audience always takes on a singular personality.
It always does.
They're either pretty good,
You know-
or great, or they suck, or they're stupid, or they're dense, or they're prigs, or they're the best people in the world, and I want to know all of them. I could go out to dinner with all, you know, but it's always one. I don't know how that works.
It does.
Must
It's
be-
always true.
Must be
Excuse me,
brainwave.
but when I walk out, I know I want the audience to love me. So immediately I walk out, I don't think I'm going to bomb. If I think I'm going to bomb, don't go on stage. But the thing that used to bother me the most is I had an opening act. Let's say I had a singer, and they would walk off and say to me, "I'm ready to go on. This audience sucks, and this audience is the worst," you know. And that would get me crazy, and I would take whoever it was and say, "Don't ever say that to me again," you know? I always walked out with the feeling that this is going to be a good audience. There is no such thing as a bad audience, otherwise they wouldn't come in.
That's because you're the headliner. They're there to see you.
Yeah, right, but
They
they
want to
wouldn't
get
come
the
in,
crappy
Bill.
singer off. No wonder they hated her.
But you know, in vaudeville, there's a famous line when there were 6 acts on the bill, and the next act was standing in the wings, and the act would come off, and you would say, "How were they?" And they say, "They were great for me."
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Another stuck. Oh, they were great
Yeah.
for me.
Right.
A question?
This one's for Rita. When you were breaking into the comedy club scene, do you feel like you were embraced, or was it kind of breaking into the old boys network?
Well, it's definitely an old boys network, but they were very nice to me, I have to say.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I liked them immediately. I like funny men, and I like being around funny men, and I was never really treated like a girl and a guy. I mean, we were always like funny people together. Like in comedy, you kind of have the people who are excluded in your circle are the people who aren't
everyone
funny.
wanted to go out with Rita. The smart girl in the class also was the most beautiful, and she was an ex-dancer.
Rita's an exception to the rule. Let me tell you something. I just finished doing a film with Rita in Vancouver, and she sent gifts to us. I mean, we never get that. I mean, you can be making all the money in the world. The producers don't do that anymore. They don't send you gifts. She sent gifts you got on the set. You enjoyed being on the set. She made it so warm. This happens to be an exception. I love this girl very much. I'm getting a divorce tomorrow.
So to answer your question, I think it depends on how you approach it. And I loved all the people. I loved being there every night. We were there every night till like 3 in the morning. And I loved comedy, and everyone there loved comedy. So I felt very included.
I hope your question has been answered. Can I ask you all, is there something in our psychological makeup that we must be funny, we must be on, and I'm saying it in the best sense of the word? Larry, I mean, would you go into the shoe business? Or would
There's
you
no business like this
shoe business.
No, you are who you are.
That's it.
And if you're lucky enough to make a fortune doing it, all the better. But I think it goes for athletes.
Yeah.
It goes for people who really love what they do and have to be who they are, you know.
Bill, I mean,
As long as...
is there a need to do this? For self-satisfaction or self-esteem or what?
I don't know if there's anything more basic than a need, but yeah, I think it's even more basic. I mean, it's just how you think. If you're going to voice your thoughts and they come into your head, you know, it's just so great that there's this benefit from it.
But what happened if you didn't? I mean, would you, the sad thing is to see someone who's a great athlete and all of a sudden stays on longer than his physical ability, and then all of a sudden you see him in the A leagues and it's kind of sad.
But George Burns was working when he was 100.
Exactly.
I mean, you can...
I was 25 when I started comedy, which is a little late. I mean, most people start when they're teenagers. And I said, George Burns is still out there telling jokes, because as long as your mind is quick, you can keep doing it.
We surprised him on stage at the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas. It was his 90th birthday. I said, George, how's your sex life? And I got a big laugh. And George waited with that cigar. And he said, Alan, he said, it's like shooting pool with a rope.
Alan,
this was before Viagra, so it was very funny.
He had another answer. He had another answer on another occasion. He said it's like trying to get an oyster into a slot machine.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is getting late, but we're in Pasadena, and so there's no place to rush to. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming, visiting with us. Thank you, Caltech, for all the hospitality. I want to thank my guests, and it's just been a very, very, very great night for me, and I'm sure by your reactions it's been a splendid night for you. Thank you for coming, and
thank you.